Hello, hello, comrades, and welcome back to the Liberation Hour. Yes, this is your host, Comrade Felicity, coming at you live from WRFU 104.5 Radio Free Urbana. Folks, welcome back. It is December 31st, 7 p.m. here in the WRFU studio. Yes, folks, I am back once again here with you this week, and we have a lot to talk about. Folks, it is the last day of 2025. Can you believe it? I certainly can't. This is kind of crazy. 2026 has a lot to bring to us. 2025 has a lot to reflect on, I feel. But first, before we reflect on anything, we have the top of the hour disclaimer. WRFU is an open forum for the Urbana-Champaign online community. Views expressed are those of the speakers and are not meant to represent WRFU UCIMC. Folks, welcome back, everyone. I'm so glad to be here. I am so glad to be amongst comrades here on the air, on the waves tonight in the air, and we have a lot to talk about. There's a few stories I want to cover, and then I also want to do a little discussion. By discussion, I mean me talking, because there's no one else in the studio with me right now, on what we should be planning to do in 2026. What is the way forward? How do we move beyond the present situation, and how do we build revolutionary optimism, folks? Well, we're going to be covering all of that in the last 10 minutes of my 30-minute live segment, and then I have a super interesting 30-minute snippet from my segment that I did with comrades Red, Markus, and Maurice, and we did an overview of reactionary versus resistance and a few different big stories that we wanted to talk about from 2025. This will be released tomorrow, hopefully on the YouTube channel, but I am going to be releasing this 30-minute segment as per usual on what we talked about. And we all have some pretty interesting topics, I think. Everyone got about 20 minutes to speak. We had a really fruitful discussion on all of these different topics, kind of tied them in all together. We talked about economic imperialism. I talked more about the Saudis, which I'm going to be talking about today as well, but I really got to talk about the Saudis, which I was excited for, because I'm really excited to actually cover more of what they have been doing in 2026. I think there's a lot to be talking about with their own imperialist ambitions and their connections with the United States, so that's going to be super interesting. On top of all of that, we also discuss ice resistance, and technology, and the current techno-feudalism movement that's popping up in these different freedom cities. I know we talk a little bit about that, but folks, we have so much to cover, so I'm going to go ahead, stop yapping. Well, I'm going to continue to yap about something that we actually have planned, and that is my first story of the night, which is from Al Jazeera. This is who's reporting. This is from Al Jazeera staff and news agencies. This was updated 12 hours ago. So this is still, I believe, an ongoing story. I could be wrong. I haven't been keeping up a ton with this, so you're learning as much as I am in this moment. But I am excited to discuss it because this is on Saudi Arabia revealing details of Yemen bombing as the UAE is set to withdraw. So we have move comes after Riyadh. I'm so bad with names on this show, guys. For anyone who's might be new listening, I'm really bad with names, so I'm sorry. Accused of Abu Dhabi of backing separatists in Yemen and bombed what it said was an Emirati weapons shipment in the port of Makuya. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started here. Saudi Arabia has released more details on the coalition bombing of the Yemeni port of Mukalla, which, I'm sorry if I'm saying that wrong. It's spelled Mukalla. So if you know how to say it at home. Which has triggered tensions with Gulf Arab neighbor, the United Arab Emirates, and prompted the latter to say it will withdraw its forces from Yemen. Coalition spokesman Major General Turki al-Maliki. I'm sorry if I'm saying that wrong again. I don't think it's supposed to be spelled Maliki. My bad. Showed images documenting the military operation carried out early on Tuesday morning. He stated that upon entering the port of Mukalla, it became clear that the two ships were carrying more than 80 vehicles and containers of weapons and ammunition. He added that the UAE side transferred vehicles, containers, and Emirati personnel to the Al Rayyan base without informing Saudi Arabia. The spokesman said the coalition adhered to the rules of engagement during the military operation. All right, whatever. Yeah, sure. The UAE announced the withdrawal of its forces from Yemen, declaring an end to what is called counterterrorism, quote, operations there after Riyadh accused Abu Dhabi of supporting separatists in Yemen. The announcements on Tuesday came after Yemen's internationally recognized government declared the UAE pull its forces from the country within 24 hours, a call backed by Saudi Arabia. Hours earlier, Saudi Arabia-led coalition forces attacked the southern Yemeni port of Mukaya, targeting what Riyadh said was a UAE-linked weapons shipment destined for the separatist Southern Transitional Council in Yemen. The STC, which initially supported Yemen's internationally recognized government against the Houthi rebels, launched an offensive against the Saudi Arabia-backed government troops this month, seeking an independent state in the south. The advance broke years of deadlock, with the STC seizing control of broad swaths of southern Yemen, including the Hadramaut and Mahara provinces, in defiance of warnings from Riyadh. Hadramaut borders Saudi Arabia, and Mahara is close to the border. Saudi Arabia on Tuesday said it was disappointed about, quote, pressure exerted by the UAE on the STC to conduct military operations in the Hadramaut and Mahara provinces. There's a lot of names happening right now, so I'm sorry if this is a little bit confusing. We'll get through it. Basically, Riyadh said it considered the moves a threat to its national security. Quote, in this context, the kingdom stresses that any threat to its national security is a red line, and the kingdom will not hesitate to take all necessary steps and measures to confront and neutralize any such threat, it said. Hasham Al-Ghanam, a Saudi scholar with the Malcolm H. Carnegie Middle East Center, said the kingdom's move, quote, made it very clear its views on Yemen's eastern provinces, especially Hadramaut, as a, quote, core national security matter. Riyadh views the region as critical, Aglaman said, because of its geography and strategic oil and port assets. There it is, folks. That's the money shot right there. Okay, stopping there for a second. As we all know, Saudi Arabia is most certainly a vassal state for the United States. They are very strategic in the way that Israel is also very strategic, and Turkey, in that they are able to do a lot of the bidding of the United States in the Middle East. And in addition to, the thing is that I would say Israel is more of that for them, because Israel is meant to be carrying out quote unquote democracy in the Middle East. Of course, this is not happening. But in Saudi Arabia, they have a ton of oil reserves, which is why we have a relationship with them. But also, this is purely an imperial squabble over the land of the Yemeni people. And it's getting a lot of Yemeni proletarians murdered and killed, unfortunately. And it's something that we need to recognize, that ultimately the people who stand to lose out the most in imperial aggression, such as this one, are always the working people who are living and working in these regions, who are oftentimes put in the line of fire as a means to be used as cannon fodder for these imperial aggressions. And it's not only extremely unfortunate, it's criminal. And it's something that, in the spirit of international proletarian solidarity, we need to recognize that all these things come down to is access to natural resources in which regions have at their disposal in order to control more land and in order to expand. And this is unfortunately the way in which all capitalists what am I saying? This is how all capitalist economies operate. This is imperialism. If you don't understand that, I would say obviously read Lenin's Imperialism, the Highest Stage of Capitalism, but also read some more foundational texts on how capitalism has come to become this beast. And so let's go ahead and continue. I don't want to completely cut off this article. So, quote, from Riyadh's view, losing influence there would be more than a local setback, he told Al Jazeera. It would create a major security gap. It would weaken energy resilience and open space for hostile or competing powers to position themselves directly south of the kingdom. Following Tuesday's rapid-fire events, the UAE's Ministry of Defense said it carried out a, quote, comprehensive assessment of its role in Yemen and decided to end its mission there. Awesome. The thing about what's been going on in Yemen and in many other countries, such as Sudan and the Gaza Strip, have been straight up imperial wars of aggression because they want access to the natural resources that exist there. Sudan also has a ton of minerals and natural resources, which is why the Saudis also have a hand in that. And it's the same thing with Gaza. And so we need to recognize what's going on here as imperial aggression. There are a lot of factions that are involved. And to be frank, I don't know a ton about a lot of these factions, and I need to learn more about them if I want to do solid reporting. But what I can say from the Marxist view of looking at just the broad strokes of what's going on here is, I would say when we're seeing these regional actors who have a lot of power where they are, it's pretty straightforward what they're trying to do here, and they said it themselves. And so we need to be cognizant of the fact that more often than not, a lot of these situations can be boiled down to access to the resources which the land is rich of, or alternatively, access to the labor that exists in these regions. And so I would say that obviously I would go to people who are more educated in the topic of these different factions and these actors, but broad strokes wise, understand. Don't be duped by people who will try to say that there is justification for the murder of thousands of people. There's not. As it pertains to Yemen, they have been extremely destabilized. I believe they went through a famine. And all of this is happening because certain regional actors want access to their oil. And I will give credit to the Houthis where credit is deserved. They stood 10 toes down with Gaza. Using the leverage that they had in the south of Yemen in order to keep basically saying, if you're going to support the genocide, then we're not going to let you use our trade routes. And I think that that's justified. If you're going to continue to support genocide, if you're going to supply weapons, if you're going to do all of the worst things possible, then yeah, I don't agree with the ideology of the Houthis. I don't support them. But I think that they were justified in that, because there was a genocide. There still is a genocide happening. And so we can recognize that, they were one of the only actors in the Middle East at the time. And I'm not sure if they still are, but at the time in which the genocide was, and it still is being carried out, but when a ceasefire was not in place, and this isn't even the first one, of course, the Houthis stood 10 toes down. And that's credit that not a lot, you can't really give a ton of other actors at the time, because most nations did not view what was going on as a genocide, especially when after October 7th happened. So in relation to what's going on here, understand that there are broad strokes. This is an imperial war of aggression. And the people who are ultimately always at the most, who are always the people who get the worst end of the stick here are the working people in Yemen, who are forced to be basically put as cannon fodder on one side or the other, radicalized by elements in which, unfortunately, they die for these things, and it's incredibly sad. And so we need to continue to support our Yemeni comrades and push for better, because this sucks. Okay, moving on to the next story. So, exclusive. If you haven't already heard about it, which you probably have, the CIA carried out a drone strike on port facility in Venezuelan coast. This is reporting from CNN. This is by Natasha Bertrand, Zachary Cohen, Jim Squito. Sorry if I'm saying that wrong, Jim. Okay, so the CIA carried out a drone strike earlier this month on a port facility on the coast of Venezuela. Sources familiar with the matter told CNN, marking the first known U.S. attack on a target inside that country. The drone strike, the details of which have not been previously reported, targeted a remote dock on the Venezuelan coast that the U.S. government believed was being used by the Venezuelan gang Tren de Aragua to store drugs and move them onto boats for shipping. Okay, well, sure. No one was present at the facility at the time it was struck, so there was no casualties according to the sources. Sure. Well, just understand that CNN is I've said this before and I'll say it again. CNN is a bourgeois media outlet. If you haven't read Noam Chomsky's Manufacturing Consent, which, I mean, you don't even have to read Noam Chomsky. You can read Michael Parenti's book on the same topic, and it's probably better. Noam Chomsky and his connections to Epstein, not great. Anyway, they will, bourgeois media outlets such as CNN, Fox News, MSNBC, I already said CNN, they will often lie. Just flat out lie, mainly because they are owned and operated by the same rich people who also own and operate many other corporations, and because they want to have control over what we are hearing. And I know that sounds crazy and conspiratorial, but this is proven. And it's, this has been proven with the Vietnam War. This has been proven with the Iraq War. This has been proven with basically all of the imperial aggressions that the United States has done, and doesn't want the public to actually know, because it makes us look, not us, it makes the United States government look really bad. And so just recognize that a lot of this might not actually be true. There might be details that will come out later that will prove some of this reporting to be false, not necessarily because these journalists know this information and are actively withholding it from us, but because these journalists might not actually even know the full story or the full information, because they are not given it, because that information is, quote, classified, or because the news network just doesn't want it getting out. So just keep that in mind as we continue to report on this. Let's see. So the drone strike, the details, oh wait, no, I've already read that. Oh, two sources said the U.S. Special Operation Forces provided intelligence support to the operation, underscoring their continued involvement in the region. But Cole Ali Wiskoff, a spokesperson for the U.S., I'm so bad with names. A spokesperson for the U.S. Special Operations Command denied that, saying, quote, Special Operations did not support this operation to include intel support. All right, whatever, Ali. President Donald Trump appeared to first acknowledge the attack in an interview last week that initially attracted little notice, though he offered a few specifics, including when reports asked directly about it on Monday. The strike could significantly escalate tensions between the U.S. and Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro, who the U.S. has been pressuring to step down through an aggressive military campaign. The U.S. has launched strikes destroying more than 30 boats in the Caribbean Sea and Eastern Pacific Ocean, and what has been described as a counter-narcotics campaign, and Trump has ordered a blockade of sanctioned oil tankers coming to and leaving Venezuela. Trump had also repeatedly threatened to carry out strikes against Venezuela, but until the CIA attacked earlier this month, the only known U.S. strikes on Venezuelan targets were against the suspected drug trafficking boats in international waters. Okay, so first and foremost, we actually don't have any evidence to prove that those boats were trafficking drugs. And in fact, they probably weren't. It's pretty, I would say, those strikes, all I can do is sigh at the situation because it's horrific. First of all, those strikes we can't even prove, and they don't want us to actually prove this, but we cannot actually prove whether those strikes being carried out were actually being carried out against people who were dealing drugs, which they most likely weren't, and were just being carried out against Venezuelan fishermen. Now, let's say that one or two of those boats were carrying drugs, hypothetically. Let's say one or two of those boats were carrying out that procedure. That still doesn't really justify bombing them. These people were not given due process. These people, we just bombed them. I know that to some people listening, that might sound like, well, why wouldn't you if they were trafficking drugs into the United States? The CIA trafficked drugs into the United States in the 80s. The CIA has been trafficking drugs into this country. This is a proven fact. So if you are someone who believes that that these fishermen deserve to be bombed because they may or may not be trafficking drugs, we actually don't know. then all of the people in the CIA also deserve to be assassinated. Because what is this? This is completely dislodged from reality. Like, there is absolutely no justification for carrying out these bombings. Absolutely none. I don't care if they were carrying 30 pounds of fentanyl on those boats. There is absolutely no justification for the bombing of people in the middle of the ocean that you actually don't know what's happening there. Because even if there was aerial footage of these things happening, there is no justification for the murder of people. There is no justification. And it was in international waters because they couldn't prove it. It's absolutely ridiculous to me, and it's the fact that the United States is allowed to carry out these operations, and everyone's like, well, it was justified because they might have been carrying drugs. I don't know. Maybe they were carrying drugs. And then people like Jeff Bezos and Mark Zuckerberg and Peter Thiel are allowed to say the most evil things ever, and it's like, well, who cares? Like they're allowed to say some of the most evil, psychotic things, like when Peter Thiel was being interviewed, and he's like, well, should humanity survive? And he didn't immediately answer yes. What? Like, these people on boats that we can't even prove if they were doing drug trafficking, because this administration and almost every single administration in this freaking country has lied about these things. You cannot trust what they are saying because they have so often lied about these situations, about what might be happening. And then there's these rich people who are actually doing drugs, who are actually trafficking in drugs, who I mean, I can't say for sure that they're trafficking in drugs. That was an assertion. That was not. It cannot be backed up by evidence. But we know for a fact that they are absolutely involved in these kinds of things, and there is no regulations on them because they own the system. They own it. They are allowed to just do this kind of systematic violence. You know, people like Mark Zuckerberg and Peter Thiel and Larry Ellison and all of these rich billionaires are allowed to own 99, they're allowed to own 100% of the world and make it miserable for everybody else. But these poor fishermen in the middle of the ocean, who may or may not have been carrying drugs, who were most likely not even carrying drugs, get bombed, get absolutely obliterated by the American military over maybe drug trafficking, when we know for a fact that our president is in the Epstein files and has 100% sexually assaulted and diddled kids allegedly. What are we doing? What are we doing? This is a backwards situation. This is completely insane. I can't wrap my head around the fact that this is allowed. The fact of the matter is that rich people are ruining our lives. They are destroying the world. They are destroying the planet. And people are getting their panties in a twist over, well, maybe these fishermen were carrying drugs, so we had to murder them in the middle of the ocean. Okay? That's not an argument. That's just you justifying the murder of people because, well, maybe they were carrying drugs, when in fact we know that these rich a-holes, I can't swear on air, that these rich people are absolutely destroying our planet, are absolutely in things like the Epstein files, and, well, he's the president, who cares? This is completely insane. Anyone who doesn't think this is an insane situation, that what's going on in Venezuela is somehow justified, and that what we're seeing right now is in any way should be allowed, the murder of innocent people in the middle of the ocean, who were probably fishing, by the way, who maybe at no point had any contact with drug lords, were like absolutely obliterated in the middle of the ocean for no reason, because Pete Hegseth took a shot and was like, we might as well. What are we doing? This is ridiculous. Okay, it's almost 5 minutes till 7:30 when I have to start playing the segment, and so I wanted to wrap up my live session just by doing a little reflection on 2025. And I think the best way we can do that is to analyze, what are the conditions? And so I did, like I said, I did my segment. the next segment that we'll be playing in 5 minutes, on basically resistance versus reaction in 2025, and what can we learn and how can we grow. And I think that we can build revolutionary optimism while also remaining conscious of reality. That's kind of the whole point. And I would like to challenge people who, Marxist or not, revolutionary or not, radical or not, to build community, to build relationships, to build connections. Even if this is not to form a political party or a political movement aimed at, destroying the Democratic Party, for example. Which, if you do want to do that, hit me up, DM me, hello. But even if you're just a regular person listening to this, which if you are, hello, and you're not a Marxist and you're just regular, you're just kind of hanging out. I challenge you, if you haven't yet, meet your neighbor, talk to someone new, build a community, build a coalition, find an issue that you care about, and fight for it. And I say that, of course, leftistly. If you're going to be against abortion or something, maybe not. But if you're someone who sees the current reality and understands that we are living in dire times where community is needed most, I implore you to challenge yourself this coming year in 2026 to find that community. Become politically conscious and active. I'm going to say it, become politically active. And I'm not saying go and support the Democrats. No, that is not at all what I'm saying. What I'm saying is we need to build an actual working class movement. We need to become elevated. We need to become different. And that means not when it comes to building a working class movement, what I mean by that, I mean solidarity. I mean looking at your fellow working person, your fellow proletarian, wage worker, and saying, I see you, and I realize that we will have infinitely more in common than me or this person will ever have with a Peter Thiel or a Mark Zuckerberg. And the realization that we can build community not necessarily just off of those lines, but also on the lines that we can make a better world in which the Mark Zuckerbergs and the Peter Thiels don't exist anymore. And I'm not saying, oh, we must go after the capitalists and murder them all. No, not like that. I'm saying we can build a revolutionary movement in which we can oust these people from power non-violently. This is possible. And build a better world in which we are all taken care of. Not just the 1%, not just the 2%, all of us, 100% of us. This world is possible. It has been done before, and it can be done again. And it's why I continue to push this revolutionary optimism, because these movements don't start in boardrooms. They don't start in these bourgeois. I mean, they can in some cases, but the revolutionary movements start with the people. They start with the masses. They start with us, you, me, your neighbor, your dog, even perhaps, if you want it. Revolutionary movements are about more than just being a revolutionary. They are about being in community. They are about finding solid middle ground together. And I'm not talking middle ground like you find a solution with your Nazi neighbor on, well, maybe it is okay to build some gas chambers. No. That's not finding middle ground. I'm talking looking at the contradictions and finding a solution that is actually dynamic and understands that our conditions will consistently always change. That is the dialectical method. And so when we build community, when we build revolutionary optimism, when we build political movements that are aimed at actually serving the masses, we are building a movement for and by each other, and this is how revolution is truly built. This is what Lenin did back in the 20th century. This is what the Bolsheviks were doing. This is what they did in Albania. This is what they did, in Mao's China before it fell off. And this is what we have been doing as communists, and we must continue to, because revolutionary movements don't just pop up. They don't just happen. You're not going to be given the funding. That's not how it works. You don't grift to the left. No, it is through hard fought wins and understanding that we, the people, the masses, we have our back. We take care of us. And so, folks, that takes me to the next segment. Everyone, I hope you so enjoyed this first 30 minutes of my segment with comrades Red, Marcus, and Maurice. I will be back at 8 o'clock to play the last song of the night. And we'll be out of here. And yeah, Happy New Year's, everyone. Enjoy.
Validating in many respects, indirectly as they are, the experiences and the struggles of Kenyan and Indian and Bangladeshi and Ethiopian workers who are struggling to survive in Saudi Arabia, to build the stadiums, to build the parks that Mr. Beast has, or to set up all those soccer fields and those golf courses. But if you were to talk, I think it's bigger than that in an ideological sense too, because if you were to talk about Bill Burr, who also parades himself around like a champion of free speech,
Huh.
why is he performing in Saudi Arabia, who assassinated Khashoggi, a critic of the Saudi family, who was assassinated in Turkey, a country with state-owned media? Libertarians and liberals, they hate state-owned media, but they love Saudi Arabia, and just mass degrees of censorship. What does a champion of free speech have any business investing in business in Saudi Arabia?
No, that's
There
a great
is no free
question.
speech in capitalism. It is really, really just the platform of the bourgeoisie, and now it's being used to deceive us from the horrific working conditions, the slave labor in Saudi Arabia, the genocide in Yemen, the genocide in Sudan and in Palestine. And I think I am very grateful that people are aware of this. They are going to continue marching for Sudan and for Palestine and for Yemen. We have to, again, pull them away. We have to wrestle with Goliath here to cripple it so that it cannot freely engage in this barbarism, but we can't reward it either. So boycotts absolutely have to continue and intensify, not just against artists, but against obviously Israeli and Saudi-owned businesses and investors and so on. And I think as a platform, as platformers, and for the proletariat, we have a responsibility to continue that transparency.
Absolutely. Yeah. And on your point about the economic imperialism that's been happening around the world, especially by the Saudis, which has been kind of the backdrop of both of these topics, but is nonetheless very important. The economic imperialism that has been happening around the world, there's a lot of shifts happening, which I think we know when I talk about like the cultural significance of the Saudis buying up, their different stakes in sports, and betting, of course, and uniquely internet culture. You have once again, I Show Speed, huge IRL streamer. If nobody knows what that is, which you shouldn't, that means you are not terminally online like myself. um but essentially an IRL streamer is just someone who streams themselves going and doing shit, like just going and doing stuff. And they're walking around doing all kinds of things. A lot of the times they're funded very well, given very a lot of cash to go and like travel. Like for example, I Show Speed did like a generational run going to like China, and a bunch of other different countries. I think he's still doing it, where he's like going to all these different countries and just like hanging out with the locals and like making videos and stuff. And it's interesting to watch folks like him be funded by these, very elite bourgeois, um, these institutions like the Saudi royal family. The economic imperialism is ripe, I would say.
Absolutely. And I know that we're coming close to time on my segment, so I just wanted and I don't know why I'm making this disclaimer. I'm not going to be brief, but I wanted to dive into one of the biggest economic themes of 2025, and that is tariffs. Trump used this kind of right-wing populism of, oh, inflation is too high, it's all Biden's fault, the worst president in our history. And the thing is, inflation is consistently going up, and it will continue to go up as competition with the American empire deepens. and proliferates. And it spends more and more on its military. It bails out the financial sector every 8 years as it stimulates the energy and heavy industry sectors. All that money is going to devalue with all these billions and billions of dollars that are being spent. Uh, Inflation went up under Bush, under Obama, under Trump, under Biden, and now it's going up under Trump again. And it could not but go up when there are so many conflicts in the world. But I think tariffs have also exacerbated this because just in the very act of these taxes being paid, there is new money that is going to be, new money that is going to be printed and enter circulation. And beyond that, revenues are being created that are going to be just shoved into the military industrial complex, shoved into heavy industry, pharmaceutical monopolies, and so on. And at the same time, it's not going to accomplish what it set out to do, that kind of right-wing populism of it creating jobs. Jobs in this country are not going to come back so long as trade will continue to exist, where American corporations can continue to abuse labor in other countries like Mexico and the Philippines, Indonesia, Vietnam, and elsewhere. But the big thing is automation. Automation has destroyed entire industries. Look at the automobile industry.
True.
Trade in itself, protectionism or free trade, is not going to solve this issue. It is the profit motive that drives corporations to cut costs, to sacrifice jobs, sacrifice pay, and to bust unions wherever they can to drive up their profits. But what this big fraud of tariffs actually serves to do is to increase the desperation of workers so that they stay at their incredibly terrible jobs that pays less and less to a rising cost of living, increases their desperation and their fear and anxiety so that they reject unions and even political activity for fear of losing their jobs, as we see
True.
with people getting fired for making jokes about Charlie Kirk or what have you, or just being politically active in general.
Yeah.
But though the revenues from those tariffs are going in government contracts, in research and development, in bailouts to those very same corporations that are not going to be able to hire employees long term because the costs are going to be too high. They can't sustain any growth they could possibly have because they're driving their customers away and taking advantage of new domestic monopolies. So there is no solution for the American worker or the global proletariat in protectionism or free trade. Uh, Automation should not be this death knell. Some industries should not exist. Labor is not the end all be all, but we can decide and we can govern and we can plan and trade in ways that removes the chains of the profit motive and frees human activity and human energy and human intellect to balanced, free development across the world. So when we talk about, and a final point, these so-called tariff rebates, these $2,000 stimulus checks that is supposedly going to be passed now by Congress, that famous body of deliberation and action, um, which means, of course, the blame has been pushed to Congress. Those $2,000 stimulus checks are dwarfed by how much the American worker has paid into them, on top of the skyrocketing cost of living while wages remain stagnant. So the wealth has been redistributed upwards already. So if we were to get them, I think it's imperative that we do not reward the same bourgeoisie who are destroying our lives, destroying our communities, committing genocide at home and abroad, as I'm sure Comrade Maurice is going to touch on with ICE. And we should instead allocate those resources to support our loved ones, ourselves, our communities, mutual aid projects, and what is my opinion, the only political vanguard that can offer the real solutions to these political problems. Now, I would say that's the American Party of Labor, but do let the capitalist class realize until it's too late that they have sold us their own hanging rope so that we can end this endless cycle of desperation and poverty and war and genocide. We have the power to end it, but it's only when we realize that we can that we can. So invest those resources, support yourself, support your comrades, support your communities, and that I believe is the way forward out of the this web that tangles us.
Wonderful. As always, I always appreciate and love listening to you talk about this kind of stuff, Red. You're so knowledgeable on it, and just bravo. Yay!
Well, you're too kind. You're too kind. I know that I'm going to be outshone here by comrades Maurice and Marcus, and I've taken up far. I think I've exceeded my time spectacularly. So
That's okay.
um, I have no segue, unfortunately.
That's
But
okay. I do.
wonderful.
Yeah, no, we're all okay. So with that, Comrade Red has talked a bit about AI and the economic and imperialism which has been going on, especially in the technology sphere. And I think Comrade Marcus has a lot of really good points on that in his discussion around tech and everything. So Comrade Marcus, whenever you're ready, take it away with your segment.
All right, thanks for having me here. And I definitely agree. When I enjoy all of Comrade Red's commentary here, and it's always very enlightening. Um, so I wanted to start with I'm a tech worker, and over the last year, I've seen uh, a lot of this technology that we use every day um, being perverted in a way and then used to further this agenda. And I think it's been happening, for a long time now. But I think, since Trump has come into office and the Republicans took over Congress, it's really accelerated to an alarming degree. And I think many people don't even know to what extent it has grown because they're doing their best to keep a tight lid on this for understandable reasons too. So I think the first thing to dive into here for me would be um, they're trying to control all aspects of media. This in a way began with I think with Elon Musk take his takeover of Twitter, and you've seen it become more or less a right-wing echo chamber, to the point where it's driven many people to create other services like it. Blue Sky is one that comes to mind, and there's other decentralized services that people use that are similar to it. But the one that has been, the shining light front and center has been the Ellisons. They started off. I believe when they purchased Paramount and CBS, and they've since grown from there. Uh, I think the first company that Larry Ellison, who is the founder and CEO of Oracle, which is another cloud service with Google, Microsoft, and all the other big players, and they've been on the scene for quite some time. His son, uh, I believe, was the owner or CEO of Skydance Media, and once they purchased Paramount, which included CBS, they kind of took a step into the mainstream media that way. Um, and recently, they also have been trying to purchase Warner Brothers, which would give them control of CNN and HBO as well. Um, I'm not up to date on that within the last week or so, but last I heard, Netflix was poised to take over that. So, um, the Allisons have been fighting to, start a hostile takeover of Warner Brothers, so that way they could essentially negate the Netflix purchase there. Um, but to go into a little more depth here, with CBS, they recently Paramount they purchased uh, something called the Free Press, and many people agree that it's the price they paid was far above what the company was worth.
Yeah.
And the the owner of the Free Press, Barry Weiss, was soon after installed as the editor-in-chief of CBS. And this is after Trump has famously, sued them numerous times. I believe the big one was their interview with um, Kamala Harris. And he's crying it's edited in a certain way and it doesn't make him look good. And they ended up, settling for that. And now he and Larry Ellison are very good friends. So this is essentially becoming an arm of the mega propaganda machine here. And I think one of the most notable stories recently was they made a report, excuse me, on CCOT, the infamous prison in El Salvador,
Oh
and
yeah, the
last minute,
concentration camp over there.
correct, yes, and at the very last minute they decided to pull it. I can't remember what their reasons were. I think they wanted opposing viewpoints along with it. So basically they wanted to make sure that the Trump administration could you know basically throw their opinions out there, or lies, as others might say. Um, but fortunately, it was leaked. I believe CBS in Canada aired it despite this order. And it was not a very pretty picture that they painted. So, um, and Barry Weiss is a very well-known supporter of Zionism. And the Ellisons are as well. And some of the things we were talking about earlier, how Saudi Arabia and Israel and the U.S. They have all these different business dealings, and it seems to me that there's so many pieces intertwined here. The I don't know. It's hard not to see this connection that they're working to basically consolidate power in the Arabian Peninsula and around it, um, and to, as was stated before, just more or less have dominant control of crude oil, whether it be from Venezuela, from Iran, from Saudi Arabia, the new deposits found near Palestine. Um, and just to unleash all this and have cheap oil with which to, power their expanded machine here. And just to wrap this part of it up, I believe just a week ago, the the Ellisons have finished a deal where they are going to purchase TikTok in America. And
Yes.
I think this is very important because with the ongoing genocide in Palestine, I think TikTok was crucial in showing the world what was actually happening there. Um, it was People were sharing videos, and no matter what, how they tried to twist this into Israel not committing genocide. I mean, people could just watch the videos, and their opinions were easily made by seeing, you know, children
And a
being
great deal of
brutalized.
aid was delivered to Palestinians as well through TikTok avenues, through ad
Correct.
revenue and donations and
It's
links and so
true.
on.
So I think this purchase, you know, uh, is basically giving more control of public opinion to, one group of people, which could shape a lot of people's views on things, when they're, only restricted to certain types of information. And frankly, it frightens me a bit.
Yeah.
Uh,
No, I wanted to jump in real fast because I was actually watching something last night, again for More Perfect Union. When you were talking about AI and everything, it kind of popped into my head. Sam Altman, in his endeavors, and AI and everything. As we all know, a lot of the present economy is propped up on the speculation that AI is going to be very profitable. This isn't looking good, and this, I believe, really ties in with economic imperialism and the problems with tech that Comrade Marcus is talking about. Where we have Sam Altman, unlike what I think a lot of people assume, this is something I certainly wrongly assumed actually. Sam Altman is not a tech guy. He's a businessman. I did not realize that.
Yeah, you see
Uh,
this with
yeah, go sorry, yeah.
sorry to interject, yeah, but you see this with a lot of these, these tech billionaires. It's the same situation with Elon Musk. That they put out this persona, that they are some kind of tech genius that brought about all these billions, that they're these self-made billionaires by their genius alone. They're coming up with all these great ideas, but that's almost never the case. They may have one little idea in the beginning, but they, basically acquire one company and then another, and they just do it the same old-fashioned way that the rest of the capitalists did.
Yep. And that's the thing is Sam Altman has actually been caught many a time lying about how profitable his companies are, or how like he, I think, bought he started his first company, I believe is called Loop, which is a software, or an app of some form where you could track your friends. He had told many people that this, tons of people were using this app. When it was finally sold and he was able to walk away, he got his money. It was later discovered that only about 500 people had been using this app, and it was completely shut down. It does not exist anymore. Um, but this is kind of what we're dealing with, where, I think there's a huge assumption that these are some like tech geniuses. I think this is very much in like the vein of Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg type beat, where people are like, oh, they were, they went to prestigious schools, or, Mark Zuckerberg is some kind of coding genius. It's been said that like Mark Zuckerberg hasn't written a line of code since 2006. These are not people who are, holier than thou, smarter than us kinds of like geniuses. They're not Einstein. They're nothing like that. Einstein was a socialist, actually. So
Could I jump in for a second,
yeah,
Comrade
yeah. Go ahead,
Felicity?
Red. Yeah.
Please.
So like my pet project, this whole little episode of ours has been imperialism. And if we're going to address, the Altmans and the Musks, this development of AI is very tethered to imperialism. Trump with Musk as like his unofficial VP, his second VP, that's director of Doge. I don't think it's any accident that this is around the same time he started pushing Ukraine's sale of their rare earth mineral rights to American tech corporations. I don't think it's incidental that Musk himself in the past, as a private citizen, uh, commented online on Twitter before he bought it, in favor of regime change in Bolivia, partially because its own lithium mines were about to be nationalized by the Morales government. And we really have to look at the investments of big tech in all of the illegal and legal, quote unquote, still destructive mining in the Congo for its cobalt and for its lithium that is creating environmental devastation, that is abusing child and slave labor. Same thing, is guarded by
Yep.
militias who, are corrupt, and they take that wealth and they plunder villages. They commit horrific acts of sexual violence. So this link between the growth of AI, this quote unquote innovation in technology, is inextricably linked to the plunder and to the destabilization of countries all over the world, even in Europe, which is, as some third worldists or Maoists would say, is untouched, as some kind of paradise, is always the predator. It
Ugh.
is also very much the prey. The working class and the working masses are very much the prey in any scenario. But I do agree. Musk is a nepo baby, a profiteer from his father who owned mines that abused apartheid labor in their native South Africa. These are not geniuses. All right, wealth is not a merit. It is inherited. It is fraudulent. It is the fruit of corruption and speculation and investment that happen to pay off. We need to disabuse ourselves of these notions that capitalism inherently produces innovation while creating graveyards in its wake. That capitalists themselves are always savants while they inherit a small loan of $1 million from their fabulously wealthy fathers.
Insane. Yeah, no, I
Yes.
remember when
How
that
very
happened.
convenient.
Yeah, very so convenient. It's so nice. It's interesting, when we talk about like the Jeff Bezoses, he didn't somehow pull himself up by his bootstraps. His parents gave him a loan of 300 grand to get his company started. That's more than enough. And especially at the time that it was starting, it's probably like, worth way more now. So, I mean,
And
of course
Bezos
Amazon is. Oh yeah, sorry, go ahead, Comrade.
Well, and Bezos sabotaged the online book selling market because he had the capital on hand to survive until the market tanked, and then he could have a monopoly over online book sales. These are not geniuses. They're goblins moving from town to town or market to market, plundering and defrauding either other smaller capitalists or defrauding millions of workers, either through stock exchanges or absolutely more consistently through their labor and the promise of job security and good wages and good benefits. And all those innovations, all that wealth, all the books that Bezos distributed, none of that would have been possible without working class people. I mean, what an innovation! Selling books. No one could have
Whoa,
thought of this
no one's
before.
done that before.
Hmm.
Wow.
Pulling minerals out of the dirt, no, couldn't have happened without Musk. So, I think that these links have to be made between imperialism and artificial intelligence and its profligacy. Um, and I think even if we were to tie it back to oil there, those machines in the mines have to be powered. So you have this greater and greater dependency on fossil fuels themselves. I
Absolutely.
think heightening these kind of global tensions in Ukraine, in Yemen, in Venezuela, and with Iran, and so on. But I really
Yeah.
did hijack this, Marcus. Did you? I think you had a final point, and I think we were going to move beyond the Ellisons. Am I correct in that?
Yes, you actually we kind of made a natural segue here, though. I have two other things I can quickly touch on here. One is you know, Palantir is a big player in a lot of this um, a lot of this cloud and infrastructure and basically data hoarding in a way. They're basically just they're taking everything they can and uh, creating profiles on people. And the reason why this was connected, I wanted to say, is uh, Elon Musk and um, let's see here. Apologies.
You're good.
Yeah, and wow, I'm really having the creator of Palantir that they
Oh,
together created. What's
Peter
that?
Thiel. Peter Thiel.
Peter Thiel, correct? Yeah. Yeah, that name's on my lips so often I can't believe I forgot it. But
He's
they
certainly
both
on my list.
yeah they both created PayPal. That was their proof of touch of genius there that allows them to be worthy of billions and billions of dollars. And from the sale of that, Elon Musk went on to purchase SpaceX, Tesla, and what have you. And Peter Thiel started a company called Palantir, and they essentially um, have gathered up all this data to create profiles of people, and their first step was into warfare. I know their systems have been used in Israel and Palestine, where they basically give the green or red light on whether or not to drone strike these people in this building here. And based on all the data they've collected, and one of the scary things is now they've branched out into other services, and with Trump's second administration coming in, and a lot of this happened under the um, under all the projects that Doge started. You know, like basically digging through all the government agencies and trying to cut waste, as they put it. They've granted access to Social Security information, healthcare information, tax information, and they are essentially building a database of profiles with which they can, predict whether or not, you're going to be a threat to the government. I don't know if any of you are familiar with the film Winter Soldier, but they more or less do the exact same thing. Um, who would oppose our world order? And then they send out these giant airships to basically murder them all, so they can't stop what they're doing.
Mm.
And it's also reticent of what was that? No, Minority Report. Where
Yeah.
pre-crime. Like, oh, let's stop the murderers before they murder. And that's a very very scary Pandora's box to open, I think, and is ripe for abuse, and many other scary things. And
Yeah.
Well, it couldn't be a more perfect name. Palantir from like Lord of the Rings was this infamously, dangerous gift that offered so much insight, but it could warp your perception. Like this level of like data collection and surveillance is almost creating enemies, and clearing out opposition, and like acting on this pre-crime kind of notion that you highlighted there, Marcus, in relation to cultural reference of the Minority Report. But the very act of this high degree of surveillance, this lack of trust in the people, this real aggression towards the people that they govern, and in their theory brought them there, is, I think, creating enemies. It's creating distrust. And I think it is very much that kind of soured gift of promising security, but creating distrust. What kind of confident, stable democracy needs to make an enemies list of the masses?
Yeah, no, and I think that this segues perfectly into what Maurice is going to be talking about with ICE, because ICE has also been privy to this technology, and has been able to, use it essentially as surveillance on people, and as they kidnap our neighbors off the street. And so, Marcus, if it's okay, if Maurice would be able to jump in and talk about his ICE stuff as well, that would be wonderful.
yeah, I had just a quick thing.
Yeah.
The one of the means of which they surveil is a set of cameras by a company called Flock, and they have set up these cameras at traffic intersections and a few places throughout cities, and they're tied into a network that uses AI to um, you know basically profile everyone and maintain this whole database of people. And recently, they partnered with Ring, the doorbell um, camera
No.
company. So all of this is tied together. Both the Flock and the Ring cameras, the ICE, uh, many people in the police, Border Patrol, the U.S. Navy has been known to access these cameras with which to basically monitor citizens on a regular basis. And I just wanted to put that out there before we move into the ICE section here.
Yeah, awesome. I think that's a great way to place to leave it with the technology stuff, and we'll definitely be expanding on this more in 2026, because this is only going to be getting worse. And so, Comrade Maurice, how do you want to follow this up with ICE and everything? There's a lot to talk about there.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot to talk about. There's a lot of angles, a lot of different perspectives to go from. First off, just thank you to all you comrades for all these insightful points that have been brought up. There's a lot of important things that have been said, specifically like jumping right off of the AI aspect of ICE. I mean, ICE has their hands in so much of AI tech. They have ChatGPT write their reports. They're using it to help surveil on people, to make lists of people. Recently, there's been discovered they have a watch list of immigration lawyers, and it's no coincidence there that a lot of those immigration lawyers are Latino or Asian American or African American or like they've immigrated from Africa, so they have a quote unquote African name. You know, it's that racial profiling that has been heightened under this Trump administration, where you just have to be brown, speak Spanish or speak non-English, and you could be treated like not just an immigrant, but an enemy of the state. I think the Trump administration has gone out of its way, using ICE, using the National Guard, using Border Patrol to turn immigration, and they're not alone here in the world, like geopolitical climate, but they're using immigration as a crime in itself. Being an immigrant, being non-Anglo-Saxon, not subscribing to a specific white supremacist, mono-ethnic idea of an American citizen could put your life in risk. And it's funny in a morbid way, in the sense that crime is actually down. Per FBI statistics, violent crime fell 49% between 93 and 2002.
Well,
I mean, sorry, 2022. And robberies down, aggravated assaults down. And not only that, studies have shown that immigrants are less likely to commit crime than native born citizens in any country. So it's not just crimes down, it's that immigrants don't commit the crimes, as in comparison. And it just highlights more how all of this is I can't find any other term, it's bullshit. I
did you
part of my
know
French.
that Fox News said otherwise, so that must be true.
the always objective Fox News, right?
Yep.
Yeah, I don't think there's any other proper way to say what's going on here. And also just the militarization of ICE is very alarming. Them using those full body restraints on people, video of them zip tying children during raids on public housing. It's not in. I don't think it's inappropriate when people see ICE and they're like, "That's the Gestapo. That's the Okrana. That's it's the secret
Brown
police."
shirts.
Yeah, exactly. It's there's a lot of fascistic militarized arms of American capitalism, imperialism, but ICE is our COINTELPRO. The amount of surveillance, the amount of physical intimidation, the amount of threat, the way that they can just snatch you off the street, and you can have an identification, and they could just say that's not good enough. The burden of proof is on you, and I'm sure all comrades organizing in ICE spaces feel this, that it's difficult to understand where legality lies. Bourgeois legality is always kind of blurry. It changes when they want it to, but with ICE, it's 1 month you can do this as a form of we'll call it peaceful resistance, but then the next month that could get you shot. And living under fascism, I think that is the kind of increased, I guess, class warfare that we're seeing. It's more and more unapologetic. It's more and more rabid. It's more aggressive. It's just blanket, and and it's almost like they know that it's so malicious, because anything that's used to put ICE into a position of accountability is immediately snuffed out. The ICE Block app was removed from the App Store. Numerous pages on Facebook dedicated to keeping track of ICE activity, keeping track of people's neighbors and their community members, taken down by Meta. We're living in a time where it's more important than ever for us to organize, to be connected with your community members, to make connections with people, to not be isolated, to get to know the people around you and care for their safety, because the only thing that we have, and we've been speaking about that throughout the segment, it is working class solidarity, proletarian internationalism, anti-fascism, and creating a real united front of real revolutionary minded people, real anti-fascist, anti-imperialist people that want a more just world, and understand that, as we've been speaking to, all the current systems allow for this. There is no there is no like true way out of capitalism through capitalism. You cannot reform a broken system. It has to be something different. It has to be something removed from this, because everything within the system that tries to fix the system from the inside just normalizes these kind of structures. It just normalizes these possibilities, these potentialities for fascistic violence. And ICE is again just the most blatant arm of that. I know in the Bronx, where I'm located, there's an ICE black site in Fordham Plaza, which is a very active part of the borough, and it's in an IHOP. Well, not in an IHOP, but it's in a building, the same building as an IHOP, and they like to snatch people up in the morning now before 8 a.m. because the person that owns that IHOP said that it's bad for business when people get snatched up and babies are crying and people are screaming and they're completely disgusted that this is happening in their community. No, that's
Fine.
bad for business. But it's an ever encroaching threat to our freedoms, and it's just so important to put ourselves out there for our neighbors. That form of class solidarity, that initiative, that urgency, that it is bravery as well to go out there and defend the rights of people that may not be able to do so themselves. Very well can't, without automatically putting themselves at extreme risk. Doing that is, I feel like that's the most, not only is it the best thing that we could do as a form of resistance, but the best thing you could do for yourself as an individual is to be part of this historic moment we're living in, where people always say, if I lived in Nazi Germany, oh, I would have done this and that, and I would have told Hitler this and that. Well, you're living in Nazi Germany.
Right.
So when the time comes for those tales to be told again from our conditions, we're going to be around to tell who really was there in the front lines, in the trenches, so to speak. We'll call people out. The time to speak for Palestine was yesterday, but it still continues today. It still continues every day until the Palestinians have their liberation. The fight against imperialism continues until it's beaten. Until the fight against ICE continues until ICE stops what they're doing, until this assault on our communities, on our immigrant neighbors, our brothers and sisters, our family members ends. But it's as it intensifies, we have to intensify what we do, and we can't become complacent, and we can't become fearful is not the right word, but we can't become pessimistic. The
Right.
conditions we face are very dire, and I hate to feel like I'm lecturing, but I have to tell myself this as well, that it is very dire conditions. The revolution is not a cakewalk. It's not a debate society, but you know, before there was capitalism, there was feudalism. So the bourgeoisie was doing the same thing. Are we going to live under kings? Are we going to live under a monarchy? Or are we going to live with a more just society? And we're living in that era now as proletarians, as the working class, as oppressed peoples. We have to decide: are we going to live under oligarchs and capitalists and imperialists? Or are we going to live in a more just society? Us as a class, we're the actors in history that can make that happen. And as the sooner we realize that, the sooner we don't have to see ICE kneel on pregnant women and go into women's bathrooms and assault children and shoot rubber bullets at priests that are peacefully protesting. We don't have to sit here and stomach that and act like it's normal. It won't be normal, as long as we continue to fight. I know that felt like a lecture, but something about what's going on today, I feel like it's
Oh,
the passion.
Well,
We need the passion.
you're very correct, Maurice. And if I may, and I again, I'm sorry for just derailing
yeah.
consistently
No,
throughout
no,
this.
no.
But I think you are very correct, and this is a class war in the same way that the Nazi Party wanted to see what it could get away with by going after the communists, the trade unionists, the communists, and then the Jews. It realized there were no obstacles in their path. We are looking today at the transgender community, at immigrants. We're looking at people of color who have historically been segregated and repressed and hunted in many ways in America. The American bourgeoisie, with all of its wealth and all these wonderful innovations in surveillance and artificial intelligence and tanks and grenades. They want to see what they can get away with in the 21st century. And I think, to your point, I think our answer as American working class people, immigrants or no, documented or undocumented, it is very much they can't get away with it. And that sounds very, bold and brash to say now, but feudalism did not live forever. Slave economy did not live forever. Nazi Germany did not live forever, and fascism in the United States very much has its days numbered as well. Um, but to the point of it being a class war, we say, and the American Party of Labor, for instance, was one of the few voices on the left, not the only voice. You know, we're not aggrandizing ourselves here, but one of the few
Mm.
people, the few parties to say, though this war in Ukraine, between Russia and Ukraine, it is an inter-imperialist war. Russia is not dignified in what it is doing and plundering and committing horrific atrocities in Ukraine. And Ukraine is not valid in just being a puppet for Western imperialism. And, in circling back to immigration, well, hold on, to Palestine. Obviously, we don't support Hamas. We don't support jihadism or fundamentalist Islam, but we do support the liberation of the Palestinian people because it is the development of Palestine that will mean the further liberation and development for the world, not for the Israeli and American ruling class. And with ICE and its xenophobic policies, they just passed a law. What was it? The Hamilton Act, in which a 20-year-old was killed by a 17-year-old MS-13 undocumented immigrant in Harford County, Maryland, the state that I'm from. And, you know, as you say, Maurice, we can't allow ourselves to be pessimistic. We can't allow ourselves to be bought in by fear. And of course, it's very intentional because you sound like a monster. How could you stand against a young woman who was murdered by a gang member? Why are you driving uh, impassioned, impressionable youth from their families into the arms of cartels? Why is Israel driving Palestinian youth into the arms of Hamas by destroying families and destroying communities? The war that the bourgeoisie wages against the laboring masses creates the enemies that they promise to destroy. They allow the Hamases, they allow the MS-13s to take advantage of collective trauma, collective grief, and desperation to use almost as agents. And it's utterly ridiculous in the sense that, as you pointed out, Maurice, violent crime is going down, and especially immigrant crime is going down because it's nonsensical for people whose very existence in this country is deemed illegal to commit illegal acts. But you see these scapegoats, and you're
Yeah.
creating scapegoats with this community racialized, nationalized terror against generally Latino immigrants.
Yeah. And
So basically, like, Hamas is not our friend. MS-13 is not our friend. So stop giving them recruiters. Stop creating conditions that destroy families and drive the youth in particular out of desperation and fear into perpetuating the cycle of exploitation from both sides and violence that has no end, that destroys communities and prevents our collective development. So I think that this is the power of working class people, that we can identify this, that we can illustrate this, and that we can recognize that we're not going to be able to just live comfortably with the Hamases and the MS-13s of the world. But
mhm.
the world is not Hamas and MS-13. This country is built by migrant labor and the labor of oppressed and working nations and classes. It is those classes that have no enmity towards each other, and when they can decide their future, when they can live in peace, there is no room for the exploitation and violence or the scapegoats of violent crime or terrorism that creates so much war and genocide that we see from Palestine to Los Angeles. So
Yeah.
I think that the revolution fundamentally, as all nations bounding together, must mean and can mean a true peace.
No, and I think that, this is such a wonderful place to leave the episode because, comrades, we are not done fighting, and we will never be done fighting for a better future for the working class. And I think it's important for Comrade Red to highlight the fact that MS-13 and Hamas are not our friends. I support the resistance of the Hamas fighters against the IOF, also known as the Israeli Occupying Forces, because I believe in resistance to them against colonial oppression. But at the same time, we have to recognize that just like the mob was for dispossessed youth in poor Italian communities, for example, back in the 1950s, these are outlets for people who are experiencing extreme economic disparities due to capitalist exploitation at the very heart of it all, which is driving them into illegal means of making money and a life for themselves in a world which essentially requires that of them, regardless of how they feel about it. Many of these folks do not actually want to join crime syndicates and cartels and gangs. This is what communities do when they don't have a system to rely on to support them. And so, working people, overall, above everything else, international proletarianism, and understanding that we are all working people in this together is ultimately, I believe, the way forward out of this capitalist hellscape and into better and greener pastures. Any closing words from any other comrades?
I would just like to say something along the same veins as comrades Red and Maurice here, and yourself with your closing statement there. I kind of had a bit of an awakening myself recently, which brought me to not just the APL, but just a newer way of thinking, and it's just like how much comfort and how much just lack of any kind of um uh difficulties in life am I willing to have, and how much when it costs so much blood and death, both abroad, and now it's all coming home, and I did not see any other choice besides either supporting, it seemed to me it was just black and white, it's supporting murder, or just fighting for everyone to have some sense of peace and a good life. And this is the only way forward I see, is fighting for um, you know, the proletariat and against the bourgeois that is just tearing the world apart right now.
Absolutely. Well, if there's nothing else to say, then we'll go ahead and wrap this up, folks. Thank you again, comrades Red, Maurice, and Marcus, for coming on today. This is the last episode before the new year, and so Happy New Year, everyone!
Happy New Year.
Revolution
Happy New Year.
2030, Revolution 2030, General Strike 2026. What about it? What about it? Come on. What?
Why don't we close it off in unison? All right.
Okay.
Revolution 2030 and 3, 2, 1.
Revolution 2030. Woo!
Happy New Year, everybody.
Happy New Year,
Happy New
everyone.
Year.
All right, I'm gonna go ahead.